Hi guys, Ben Parsons here again on the Movie and More channel. And the other day I was reading an article on the internet about famous directors, and I saw that there was a poll in Total Film magazine, I think in 2007 or 2008, where Alfred Hitchcock was voted the best director in history. And I didn't really agree with that. I think Martin Scorsese is a lot better director. And what I wanted to do today is a video showing you my personal top 10 favourite Martin Scorsese films and explain why I think that he's a better director. Now, my 10th favourite Martin Scorsese film is Hugo. It's a 2011 film and he won a Golden Globe for Best Director. Now, it's an all-star cast, as many of his films are, and it stars Asa Butterfield, I think I pronounced that correctly, Asa Butterfield, who also stars in Ender's Game now. It's a new film that's coming out at the cinema at the moment. And he stars as Hugo, a 12-year-old boy who loses his father, played by Jude Law, in a fire. And after he loses his father, because his mother's not alive, he is taken to stay with his uncle. And his uncle is not a very nice uncle at all, doesn't treat him very well, but at least he looks after him in his place of work. His uncle works in a Paris train station, fixing and winding up the clocks in the station. Now, Hugo, while he's with his uncle, learns a lot of things about clocks and how to fix things. And before his father died, he was helping his father build a mechanical man. And now, after his father died, and with the help of his uncle, who helps him explain how to fix and repair clocks, he's trying to repair the mechanical man himself using his father's notebook as a guide. And one day his uncle disappears and no one knows where he is. And because Hugo's afraid that they're going to catch him and take him to an orphanage, he continues to repair and wind the clocks himself. He's living in the clock tower. I think he lives in the clock tower of the Paris train station. Okay, and the only way he can survive, because he's got no one to help him, no adults, is he steals food from the local shops inside the Paris train station. And as well as stealing food, he also steals, toys and mechanical parts and things like that to help him finish the mechanical man that his father was making. One of the places that he steals parts from is a toy shop. And the owner of the toy shop is played by Ben Kingsley. And one day when he's trying to steal some parts, Ben Kingsley catches him. And because Hugo, the only thing Hugo's got on him is the notebook, the toy shop owner, to teach him a lesson, takes his notebook away. And obviously to Hugo, it's so important. It's probably the last thing that his dad left him, and also the only thing that's going to help him finish the mechanical man that his dad was making. So what he does is when the train station, when the toy shop closes, in the train station, he follows the toy shop owner home to his house to try and get the notebook back. And while he's sneaking into the house, he meets the toy shop owner's goddaughter, who's played by Chloe Grace Moretz. And while he's doing that with his new friend, Isabelle, she's called, she's played by Chloe Grace Moretz, they're going around the train station trying to find parts and trying to find the notebook. Okay, and the only problem they have, obviously, is the train inspector, okay, who's played by Sacha Baron Cohen, who plays a really good part in this. And they're always trying to avoid being caught by him. And I'm not going to explain any more because I don't want to give the plot of the film away. But it's really a really refreshing film, and it was Scorsese's first shot on a family entertainment film, and it looks amazing. And you can see that it was directed perfectly. And normally when you have young actors in a film, it's not really as good as you expected, but these two do really well. And obviously with the help of Sacha Baron Cohen, who plays the train inspector in a part that's not usually the sort of part that he plays, he does really well in this. I really enjoyed the film. You can see that Martin Scorsese did a really good job on this, and I just really love this film. My 9th favourite Martin Scorsese film is The Departed. Okay, it's a 2006 film and it won 4 Oscars. 2 of which were Best Picture and Best Director. Okay, now as always, it's a great all-star cast. You've got Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Nicholson, Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, Alec Baldwin, and also Martin Sheen. Okay, and literally it's a crime thriller remake of the 2002 Hong Kong film Infernal Affairs. okay? And it's set in Boston, and what it is that the Irish Mafia are getting really strong in this part of Boston, and the police are, they're really being overrun by the Irish Mafia. So what they do is they sort of train an undercover policeman to go in and hide in the group of the Mafia and report on what's happening and the things that they're doing, so they can sort of try and crack down on this Irish Mafia. The problem is the Mafia have got the same sort of idea, and they plan their own mole in the Boston Police Department. So literally we've got two sides. You've got an undercover policeman who's reporting on the Mafia, and then we've got a mole in the police department reporting on the police. At the same time, each of the groups, the Mafia and the police department, know that they've got a mole, and they know that they've got an undercover cop working with them. So at the same time, they're trying to figure out who it is. So these two characters, Leonardo DiCaprio, who plays Billy Costigan in the film, he's really scared because he doesn't want to get caught, and at the same time, Matt Damon has got the same problem. He doesn't want to get caught by the police, and it's a really bad situation for both of them. So that's why it's such a thriller, okay? Because you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know who's telling the truth, you don't know who's lying, and it's such a great gangster drama. It's beautifully written. It's full of twists and turns, and it's got an all-star cast. Jack Nicholson plays the leader of the Mafia. You've got some great supporting actors. Mark Wahlberg as the police sergeant. He puts on a really good Boston accent, and I really enjoyed all of the actors. I really enjoyed the way it was filmed and the way it was written, and it just really showed that Martin Scorsese still has got what it takes, and he can still do a great gangster movie. Now the next film on the list is Shutter Island. Okay, it's a recent film. It's a 2010 film. And I don't know why it was nominated for a lot of awards, but didn't actually win any. Okay, basically we got three main actors. We got Leonardo DiCaprio, as you've probably realised he's in a lot of films. Mark Ruffalo, and also Ben Kingsley once again. Okay, and it's based on a novel that also called Shutter Island. It was written by Dennis Lehane. Okay, he also wrote Mystic River and Gone Baby Gone. Okay, so he's obviously got a lot of talent, and in this film it also shows. Okay, and Leonardo DiCaprio basically plays a US federal marshal called Teddy. Okay, and he's got a new partner called Chuck, who's played by Mark Ruffalo, and they're sent to an island which is in the middle of the Boston Harbor, I think, to investigate a disappearance on the island. And basically the only thing that's on this island is a mental hospital, but it's it's for the criminally insane. And obviously, when one of the patients escapes, it's a federal issue. So they're sent to this island to investigate what's happened and to try and find this person. Obviously thinking that she's still on the island, okay? And when they get to the island, they're greeted by the two head doctors, okay, which are played by Ben Kingsley and Max von Sydow. And straight away, Leonardo DiCaprio, feels that something's not right on the island, because, they don't really help him as much as he thinks that he should help them. And so they start investigating more, and when they realise that something bad's going on, they can't even get off the island or call for help because a huge hurricane comes along, and everything, they have to close everything in. So they're basically stuck on this island full of criminally insane people and doctors that they don't trust, and they have to try and find out what's happened to this missing person. Okay, and also during the film, it's such a thriller that you realise that Leonardo DiCaprio himself, obviously played as Teddy, has a lot of his own problems too. He's not completely sane himself, and being stuck on this island and being with these type of people, you really see that it's starting to trouble him. And the film basically follows him investigating this incident with a missing patient, and also having to fight his own inner demons. And it's just so well done. Martin Scorsese, as always, he's filmed it really well. It's a psychological teaser, great performance from Leonardo DiCaprio and Ben Kingsley as always. So, it really, the first time you watch it, you don't really understand what's happening, and, you're really interested in what's going on, but, you're not sure what's happening. That's why it's such a suspenseful film, and, it really drags you into it. And the end of the film is, it comes to a great climax, which I'm obviously not going to explain, but, it's a great Martin Scorsese film. Great climax at the end, and obviously great acting by Ben Kingsley and Leonardo DiCaprio. So if you haven't seen it, you have to give this a watch. My seventh favourite Martin Scorsese film is they're all so good, it's really difficult to make a list, but it's Raging Bull, okay? It's the 1980 film, which was nominated for both an Oscar and a Golden Globe for Best Director, okay? And because it's an older film, it was one of his first films. It hasn't got such an all-star cast as a lot of the newer films, but it's still got Robert De Niro in it, and it's still got Joe Pesci in it, which obviously, if you've seen a lot of Martin Scorsese films, these pair, when they're together, there's nothing better. Okay? Literally, Raging Bull is taken from the personal memoirs of the 1940s Italian-American middleweight boxer Jake LaMotta. Okay? So the film follows, obviously, his boxing career, and also his career outside of the ring, and his relationship with especially him and his brother and him and his wife, and the problems he had. Okay, the rise and fall of Jake LaMotta. Okay, the other side of the film, obviously the boxing matches. Martin Scorsese really captured, what it was like in the 1940s in the boxing ring. He films it in black and white. It gives it like a visually stunning effect, and the acting is, as always, Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci is really, really good. If you haven't seen this film, you've really got to watch it just for the relationship between Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. They're brothers, and it's really interesting also to see such a famous character in history that he did so well inside the boxing ring, but outside the boxing ring, he just destroyed everything. And literally, it shows you his life, the good times and the bad times, as I said, but what happens to him at the end, when he destroys his whole boxing career and what he ends up being at the end of the film. And it's also good to see it if you've got the Blu-ray. They've got some extras on there where they actually show the real people, Jake LaMotta and Joey LaMotta, his brother. And if you look at them when you see them in the documentary, they're so close to the characters that Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci played. It's unbelievable the way they act and the way they speak. Robert De Niro did it so well. And it's also important to mention that, obviously, in the later years of Jake LaMotta's life, when he stopped boxing, he put on a lot of weight, and Robert De Niro in his character actually had to put on 27 kilos to play him. So it just really shows you the kind of effort that actors like Robert De Niro go to, to really play the part of someone famous in history. So if you like boxing, you're going to love this film. And I also think if you don't like boxing, you're still going to love this film because the acting's great, the direction's great, and it's a really interesting boxing film. Okay, so the next Martin Scorsese film is Cape Fear. Okay, it was filmed in 1991, I think, and it didn't win any major awards, but as all his films are, I thought it was amazing. Okay, this does have an all-star cast once again. It's got Robert De Niro in it, it's got Nick Nolte, it's got Jessica Lange, Juliette Lewis, and Cape Fear is actually a remake of a 1962 film also called Cape Fear. And the two main actors in the film were Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum, and they come back in this Martin Scorsese version as cameo appearances. Okay, and literally the film follows Sam Bowden, who's a lawyer in North Carolina, I think, and he's played by Nick Nolte. Okay, one day he's confronted by an ex-client of his called Max Cady, who's played by Robert De Niro, who he defended, I think, 14 years earlier. And he didn't defend him very well, obviously, because Robert De Niro was sent to prison, or Max Cady was sent to prison. He's an illiterate person. He's not very intelligent. Doesn't know much about the world. No. But while he's in prison, he really sort of comes back. He learns to write. He studies law. He learns a lot of things about the world. And when he's investigating things about law, he finds that Nick Nolte, who was defending him, held back a lot of evidence that he could have used, and they were probably found him innocent. So obviously he's in prison for 14 years, and all he's thinking about now is trying to get back at his ex-lawyer played by Nick Nolte. And as soon as he gets out, he goes straight to his hometown and he confronts him. Okay, but what he doesn't do is sort of like you'd expect, just kill him straight on the street. What he starts doing is harassing him and his family. Bit by bit, he's harassing them. It's getting worse and worse. Nick Nolte, he's calling the police, he's trying to get this man sent back to prison, but Max Cady's really intelligent. He does it in a way that he doesn't break the law, so the police can never touch him, and it's getting more and more and more, and then you sort of realise that eventually he's going to get to the point where he's going to kill him, but he's sort of toying with him first. So it's a great psychological thriller, and Robert De Niro plays Max Cady so well. If you haven't seen this film, the film opens up with Robert De Niro in prison. I think he's doing press-ups or chin-ups or something. He's really ripped, he's got muscles, he's got tattoos all over him. So you can see that Robert De Niro, once again, he really got into his part. And when you see him, he really scares the crap out of you. He does the character so well. And that's it. Martin Scorsese films as always. He films it brilliantly. It's the way his direction is faultless in this, and also you have some supporting actors. Jessica Lange, who's Nick Nolte's wife in this. She's not in it very very long, but she plays a good part. And also Juliette Lewis, who's his daughter. I think in the film she's 16 years old, so it's one of her first parts in the film. But you can really see from this film that she's gonna be a great actress. And why is the film called Cape Fear? Because literally after such harassment, the only thing he can do is either kill Max Cady or run away. And what he does, he runs away, and they go to a place called Cape Fear, where they've got, I think, a boathouse, and they try and escape from the harassment of Max Cady, and they hide out in Cape Fear. So once again, a psychological thriller by Martin Scorsese. It really brings you into the film. It's got a lot of depth, and I really enjoyed it. And if you haven't seen this, take a look, because once again, great performance by Robert De Niro and Nick Nolte. I think he's only been in one Martin Scorsese film, but this film I really liked him. Okay, so we're down to the top 5 Martin Scorsese films, and the 5th one is Casino. Okay, and once again we have Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci as a duo in the film, and it's the 8th and last time that Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro worked together. Okay, and it's a 1995 film, and it was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Director. And there are 3 main actors, a lot of supporting actors, but the 3 main actors, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, as I said, and also Sharon Stone, who plays Ginger in the film. Okay, so Robert De Niro in this film plays Sam Rochenstein. Okay, his nickname's Ace, throughout the whole film that everyone calls him Ace. Okay, and at the start of the film, he's a bettor. He bets on sports and games, and he does really well, and he sort of becomes quite famous around the neighborhood for getting everything right and always making money for the people he gives tips to. So the mafia decide, because he's such a good man, he's winning money or owning money, that they decide to send him to Las Vegas to be the director, the head of the Tangiers Casino. Okay, so they send him out there, and they also send him out with Joe Pesci, who in this film is played by as Nicky Santoro, I think he's called, and he's there literally as a bodyguard to protect Ace, so that no one messes with him. Okay, and what he does, he literally straight away starts doubling the profits of the casino. Their life completely changes. They get loads of money, they start having fame and women and things like that, and that's when Ginger comes in, played by Sharon Stone. Ace wants to marry her, he falls in love with her, she's a hustler at the casinos, they get married and have children, and so the story follows Sam Rochenstein, his life in the casino, his job in the casino, his bodyguard, Joe Pesci, who keeps everyone in control or under control, and his wife, Sharon Stone, who surprisingly, her surname is Stone, because through 90% of the film she's actually stoned out of mind, so it's a bit of a coincidence. But I really enjoyed this film. It's another gangster film by Martin Scorsese. Robert De Niro, as always, plays a really good role. He's very calm throughout the whole film. His character, he's always wearing brightly coloured suits, and he's always smoking cigarettes on a long, cigarette smoker. And so you got two characters in the film. You've got Robert De Niro, who's completely in control and calm, and then you got Nicky Santoro, played by Joe Pesci, who's just out of control, and every time someone insults him, he beats the crap out of him and goes around killing people. So they do really well together. And one thing I've got to say is the film is actually quite violent, and there are a lot of violent scenes in the film. And I think it just adds to the whole gangster mobster type of film, and it really gives truth to the film, especially in Las Vegas, when people, there was powerful people, dangerous people out there that did these sort of things. And I think it really added to the film, but there are some people, I'm sure, that think it's a bit violent. But overall, written really well. It was written, I didn't actually say it was a non-fiction book written by Nicholas Pileggi. And directed well, and really enjoyed this film, a mafia thriller. Now my 4th favourite Martin Scorsese film is Goodfellas. And I'm sure if you've seen Goodfellas and Casino, you're going to say that they're very similar. Okay, so Casino, which I was talking about before, and Goodfellas, they're very similar. They're gangster movies, and the only thing is that Goodfellas was actually done 5 years before Casino, so you could actually say that Goodfellas is the original Martin Scorsese mafia movie. It's also written by Nicholas Pileggi, who wrote Casino. So they are very similar, and they've also got very similar actors. But Goodfellas, I find this a lot better than Casino, and obviously it was the original, you know, before The Departed and before Casinos, okay? So as I said, it's got the same actors. It's got Robert De Niro, who plays Jimmy, and it's got Joe Pesci, who plays Tommy. Once again, a completely psychotic mafia guy who loves killing people and just, you know, really trigger happy, okay? But he does it so well. Now, the thing about this film, it was done in 1919. It was nominated for an Oscar and a Golden Globe for Best Director, but it didn't win them. But it did win a BAFTA, okay, for Best Director, you know, the British awards, okay? And once again, it's got the duo Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci in it, but this time neither one of them are actually the protagonist in the film. The protagonist is Ray Liotta, who's also a really good actor in this film, you know, really made him famous. And literally the film follows Ray Liotta as Henry Hill, who was an FBI informant. Okay, he was a mafia gangster and then an FBI informant, and it follows his life. I think from the 1950s to the 1980s. Okay, so when he was a young child up until when he left the mafia and he was an informant for the FBI. Okay, and Ray Liotta does really well, you know, in his role. You know, it's a type of character that, you know, his emotions are continually changing. You know, at the start he's really happy, you know, he's not sure what's happening with the mafia, and then at the end, you know, he's completely in control, 100% mafia, and then he gets scared because obviously he goes to the FBI and he's worried. So it's a character that goes through a lot of different changes, and Ray Liotta does really well in this. And basically, the film, as I said, is based on the true life story of Henry Hill. And it follows him from when he's young, when he's living in Brooklyn. I think they're living in Brooklyn. And, you know, he's really interested in the mafia. You know, in his neighborhood there's a lot of mafia, and, you know, he's really impressed by them. So he starts sort of hanging around them, and eventually one day one of them gives him some errands to do. He starts working for them. And as he works for them more and more, you know, they give him more important jobs. And one day the head of the mafia in this area, who's called Paulie, okay, who's played by Paul Sorvino, you know, he sees him and, you know, thinks he's got potential. He takes him under his wing and starts giving him really important jobs. He starts going up through the ranks, Henry Hill, and eventually they pair him up with Joe Pesci, okay, who I think is called Tommy in this film. He's called Tommy, and you know, they work together. And, you know, they start going up through the ranks. They start doing a lot of robberies, famous robberies, and eventually they meet Jimmy, who's played by Robert De Niro, who's a lot older than them and knows a lot more than them, so he becomes their mentor. But these three, they join together, and what they do is they form the Goodfellas. Okay. Now the film, as I said, is very closely related to Casino, but Casino doesn't compare with this film. This film is the original gangster movie film. Once again, Joe Pesci's amazing in this film. You know, I can't believe, you know, when you see other films like Home Alone and My Cousin Vinny and things like that, you know, you can't believe it's the same actor, because he does so well in these films, in Casino, in Goodfellas. You know, you literally think he's like that. You know, if you see him in the street, you just sort of run away because you think he's going to pull out a gun and, you know, hit you in the face with it and, you know, punch you to death. He's such a good actor. He really plays the part well. And Robert De Niro does really well in the film. He's not in it as much as Casino. Obviously, he's not playing the protagonist role, but, you know, when he's in it, he plays really well. And the three of them together, they really do well together in this film. And Martin Scorsese, you know, at this time, 1990, you know, he's really doing well. He knows how to film the films. You know, it's just 100% Martin Scorsese. And, you know, if you like Martin Scorsese and you like gangster movies, this is the gangster movie for you, and it's the best gangster movie he's got. Now we'll on to the top 3 Martin Scorsese movies, and my third favourite Martin Scorsese movie is Gangs of New York. Now, I actually watched this last night, so it's still quite fresh in my mind, and literally it's about what the title says. It's about gangs in New York. You know, it's set in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. You know, a time when the Irish were coming over from Ireland, and you know, they were all going to New York, and there was a lot of obviously political unrest and a lot of people who were, you know, living badly. And what they did, they formed gangs, okay, in New York, and there were loads of gangs, but there were two main sides. Okay, there were like the native gangs, which were actually full of British and Dutch people that were come a long time before, and they were actually born there, and they called themselves the natives. And obviously gangs that were Irish gangs that obviously were streaming off the boats, you know, in the hundreds and thousands every month, and they formed their own gangs. And out of all these gangs, the two main gangs were the American natives, led by Bill Cutting, who his nickname in the film is Butcher, the Butcher, and is played by Daniel Day-Lewis. And then the Irish gang, was called the Dead Rabbits. The leader of this one was played by Liam Neeson. Okay, and his name is Priest Vallon. Okay, and literally the film opens up with these two gangs fighting each other, and as always, Martin Scorsese films are, they're full of blood and full of gore. It's very violent, but I'm just supposed in the 1800s, 18 and 1900s, this is what it was like in these huge cities when there was conflict. And the film it follows the leader of the two gangs and what they have to do to try and control the area of New York that they live in, which is actually called the 5 Points, which there are 5 different districts and they all join in 1 point, and there's like a square called the 5 Points, and this is where they normally fight, and this is where the people want control over it. Okay, so what happens is one of the leaders of the gangs wins in the battle, and he gains control of the 5 Points, and the film follows this through the 1840s, 50s, and 60s, the evolution of New York City, the evolution of the gangs and what they do to keep control. But it is a really good film. It's not just about these gangs fighting all the time. I don't think that the film is just about gangs fighting. They really show the evolution of New York City. One of the best things about this film is, the scenes that Martin Scorsese prepared. In the background, it always looks really authentic. There's a lot of different issues. They deal with the Civil War, they deal with the draft. At the time, there was a lot of problems with slavery, and when they got over the problems of slavery when it was banished, they had the problems of the draft and the Civil War, so the poor people had to go off to fight and the rich people didn't. So there's a lot of clashes, with a lot of riots, a lot of protests. And in the middle of this, we all see like the warriors in the middle of New York City who are fighting over the possession of this 5 Points, while other issues, much more important issues are happening at the same time. And they really do it well. They bring the characters together. You have Daniel Day-Lewis, who plays William Cutting, the Butcher. You have Leonardo DiCaprio, who plays Amsterdam, who was Priest Vallon's son, Liam Neeson's son. And you also have Karen Diaz, who, is obviously playing the woman, the female part in the film. And she does really well too. I really enjoyed it. I don't normally like Cameron Diaz's films, but in this film she did really well. And, with an all-star cast like that, you can't go wrong. And as always, Martin Scorsese brings a really, a fresh look at a film. It's set in the 1900s, and you can see he really worked hard. The costumes are all done really well. The scenes, as I said, in the background, and the cameras, the way they film it, and there's a lot of action and fighting and great scenes. And I really enjoyed the film, and I'm sure if you enjoy Martin Scorsese films, this is definitely a film that you should see. One of the things I liked about the film is one of the last scenes, they show like the scene of New York in the 1900s and 1840s and 50s and 60s. And slowly they go through time, and you can see New York City changing, and it comes up to 2000, the year 2000, basically, when you've got the Twin Towers there. So, it's a really good scene, a couple of minutes where you can see that New York is evolutionizing. And I really enjoyed the film, really filmed well, really written well, and Martin Scorsese, one of his best. Okay, so we get down to the last two. So my second favourite Martin Scorsese film, and I'm sure a lot of people might disagree with me here, is Taxi Driver, the 1976 film, okay, which wasn't nominated for many things, but it was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Director, but it didn't get it. Okay, so it's one of Martin Scorsese's earlier films, okay, and it's also one of the films where Robert De Niro, who plays Travis in the film, he still wasn't very famous. I think he'd done Godfather Part 2 and Mean Streets, which is another Martin Scorsese film. So, it wasn't really famous, and this was the first time he had the opportunity to play a protagonist role in a film. Okay, and it's also got an all-star cast, but as I said, at this moment in time, they weren't that famous. We had Robert De Niro, who plays Travis, okay, and we have Sybil Shepherd, who plays Betsy, and Harvey Keitel, who plays Sport, and Jodie Foster, who in this film, I think she's about 11 or 12 years old, and she plays Iris. Okay, in the film, literally, it's set in New York, and it follows Robert De Niro, who is Travis Bickle, who's a New York taxi driver. Okay, but he's an ex-marine. He's an insomniac, so he's not all there. And what he does, literally, he works during the night in the most dangerous parts of the city, and during the day, because he can't sleep, he literally spends most of his time in theaters watching porn films. So he's a guy that with insomnia, watches a lot of porn films and ex-marine. So you already start to realize, he does a monologue during the film, and in a monologue, he's narrating the film. So the way he speaks and the way he's talking, you see that he's not all there. Okay, so it follows him, the taxi driver that drives around New York City at night, and he's always looking at all the problems that the city's got, prostitution, child prostitution, drugs, violence, and he doesn't like it, and he lets you know he doesn't like it. And one of the important things that happens in the film is that he sees a woman who's a campaign volunteer, for a guy that wants to be president. I can't remember who it is. And he sees this woman from his taxi cab, and he falls instantly in love with her. And when he starts going out with her, he does approach her and he starts going out with her, but things don't turn out as the way he wanted. And she sort of tells him that she doesn't want to see him anymore. And this is when something happens in the film, with the mental problems that he's got, and when something like this happens, that's when everything goes wrong. He really starts to hate the city, hate the people, hate the violence, hate the prostitution. He buys some guns, and you don't know what he's going to do, but the way he's speaking in the film, something big's going to happen. And one day, one of the things that really influences him is that he sees Iris, played by Jodie Foster, who's a child prostitute, and she literally, well, he decides that this is his goal, to protect this girl, and this is the first thing that he's going to do, is protect this girl from her pimp, played by Harvey Keitel, who's great in the film, by the way, called Sport. And this is what he wants. He wants to clean up the city. He wants to protect the young children who are in child prostitution, and it's literally his life driving around in the taxi and his thoughts on the city. And obviously during the film it gets more and more intense, and you don't know what's going to happen, but he's building up. He starts training, starts doing weights, he cuts his hair differently, and you can see that he's slowly going mad. But he's still got a few things in his life that he knows that he's got to do first before anything big happens. And one of the things is Jodie Foster is the child prostitute. He wants to protect her. So as I said, this is one of Martin Scorsese's earlier films, and it's a very original film. He's got a really original style of filming. A lot of the scenes are filmed from inside the cab, the taxi, and from the eyes of Travis Bickle. And it's a slow moving film, but it's not boring. It's interesting. It builds up a lot of suspense, and it really gives you a good idea of what it was like New York City in this times. The dialogue in the film, it's really dark and gritty. He's filmed it really dark and gritty because he wanted it to be like that. And most of the scenes are filmed at night, and obviously it has a surprise ending, which I'm not going to tell you. But if you like Robert De Niro and you like Martin Scorsese, Taxi Driver is the film for you. Okay, so we're here. Martin Scorsese's best film, in my opinion, of course, The Aviator. Okay, a 2004 film. It's not a very old film. It's one of his newer films. And obviously it stars Leonardo DiCaprio as Howard Hughes. And, I'm going to tell you about the film and tell you why it's my favourite. I'm sure there are a few people that don't agree with me, but it's my favourite. Okay, so The Aviator is a biographical drama based on the life of Howard Hughes. Okay, he was a film producer and an aviator, and the film follows his life between the 1920s and up to 1950, I think it is. So what happens is that his family are very rich. They own a big business, and they die. Okay, and he's left a lot of money. What he does is he starts investing a lot of money into producing films, and a lot of his films have got airplanes in it because he loves aviation, and with no expense spared, he puts all his money into what he likes, into films and aviation, and because all the money he's got behind him, there's nothing he can't do. He produces really great films, he designs great planes, breaks airspeed records, and loads of things like that. So what it is following him through his life as this famous aviator and film producer. And as always, it's a rise and fall film because Martin Scorsese loves rise and fall films. And with all this money and all this fame and all the women that he meets and things, it's very difficult to control it. And also he has a disease, an obsessive compulsive disorder, which he has to try and keep under wraps and control. So all the things that he's got in his life, which he actually wanted, he can't control it. So it's a rise and fall film about Howard Hughes It also stars Alec Baldwin as Juan Tripp, who's the owner of Pan Am Airlines, who has a lot of problems with Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously, because they're both aviators and they both want to have a monopoly over the airways and things like that, the airports and airlines. And then we also have two female characters played by Cate Blanchett and Kate Beckinsale, who obviously are Leonardo DiCaprio or Howard Hughes' wives and girlfriends, and they do really well. Kate Blanchett plays Katharine Hepburn really well. She puts on a really good accent, and I looked Katharine Hepburn up on the internet, and she really depicts the character well. And Kate Beckinsale also does very well. She stars as Ava Gardner, who's one of Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriends, and she helps him a lot through his disease and the problems that he has. And she does really well in the film. Now, there are also other roles. There are a lot of famous people, side roles. You have Jude Law, John C. Reilly, and William Dafoe, and they also do very well in the film. But the main characters are Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Blanchett, and then you have Alec Baldwin, obviously, and Kate Beckinsale. Got a lot of action. When you got a lot of planes, he's flying the planes for the first time. The films, it's really done well. There are parts, that it's slow explaining his life, and then there are other parts, they're explaining his inventions and the airspeed records and politics and people who hated him and people who loved him and things that he did for the military. He invented the biggest plane in the world, the biggest heaviest plane in the world, and people thought he was mad, and he didn't stop doing what he wanted to do until he reached his goals. And it's one of these films that gets really interesting. It's 3 hours long, but it never got long, it never got tedious, and I really enjoyed the film throughout. And obviously the best thing for me, and this is why it's my #1 Martin Scorsese film, is the way it's filmed, the way it's done, and also the work that Martin Scorsese does with Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio is amazing in this film. He has to depict this character, that's got obsessive compulsive disorder. He's got a lot of problems mentally, problems with his girlfriend and his wives. He wants to be the best, and got money, a lot of pressure. He plays the character so well. And also there's a homage to Howard Hughes himself. Martin Scorsese in the film, I think it's the first 15 minutes or first hour of the film, he changes all the things in the film that are supposed to be green. He changes them to the color blue, and it's like a homage for Howard Hughes, because when Howard Hughes filmed and produced his films, they used a bipack color, and that's what happened. You had a bipack color, and you had the reds and the blues. So I remember there's a scene in this when Leonardo DiCaprio was eating some peas, and the peas are blue. So at the start, you don't understand why, but when you look into it and you look on the internet and it explains all about it, you look on the extras on the Blu-ray, for example, they explain to you why he did it. It was a homage to Howard Hughes and his film producing days. And Martin Scorsese, when he does a film, he does it really well, films it well, and he doesn't forget about the origin or the people that he's filming about. He works hard, and that's why he's one of the best directors. The best director in my opinion in the world. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the film. If you have any comments, please write them down below, because I want to know what sort of films do you like. I want to know if my list was the same as your list, or you would take a few films out and put other Martin Scorsese films in, or literally if you think that my list was completely backwards or something like that. Just let me know down below. And if you haven't subscribed and you still want to see videos about films and directors and film memorabilia, please click subscribe on the button, and that would be great.